Hi guys, Chris from InvestRep here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And today's little star of the show is this fella here. This is a children's python. It's not because they're ideal for children, it's because the guy that discovered them, his surname was actually Childrenai. Just a little interesting piece of information. And these guys are actually going to star the entire show today in the sense of, I'm not going to talk about Antaresia or spotted pythons and children's pythons in general. I'm just going to talk about breeding cycles for different species of pythons. So this one will only be applicable to pythons, not colubrids. So we're going to talk about hibernation, we're going to talk about more brumation and how we cycle our males and females and what we do with them. So the first thing you got to determine is your snake a winter breeder or spring breeder? And not a lot of people know that certain python and snake species are winter breeders. We all tend to focus on only spring breeding. And what I've noticed on the information that I always got was that children's pythons in specific was always spring breeders. So you need to start putting them together from August, September. And last year, with the huge disappointment, I lucked out. And I thought, well, I need to reconsider this because I did everything down to a T, right on the book. My weights was right, my ages was right. What am I doing wrong here? And I had to rethink everything. So let's talk about number one, cycling. And that will actually fall into a few points that we do. So let's talk number one about males. And you don't have to manipulate the whole system. I always say, don't manipulate, replicate. And what I mean by that is, I've noticed that I'm based down the Western Cape. Our winters are cold and wet, and up in Gauteng, you've got cold and dry winters. But the main thing that stays the same is you've got fluctuations in that your minimum and maximum gradient is now getting further apart from each other. So you'll almost have the same daytime temperature, but you'll have a huge increase in your lower numbers. So all you need to do is you need to keep on replicating that on your enclosures as well to where the snakes can handle that. And when I say cycling, when I get the first cold spells in April, I would actually start my cycles. And my cycles on the males, it's critical to get them cold. Number one, to get good sperm out of them. And number two, to put this guy in breeding mode. One thing I've noticed last year is my one male, the ghost male we had, he was a bit of a lazy fella. He didn't want to breed enthusiastically. Then I acquired this one for the sole purpose of male combat. And that was one of the things that I managed to get right. So what I mean by temperature cycles is during the summer times, I'll run my temperatures day and night right through exactly the same. So you've got my hotspot set at 32, my cold side will be about 25, 26, and will stay there right through the year. But when we get the first cold snap, you've got two options that you can run here. Number one, you can automatically run your temperature cycles. Now I'm actually going to put a picture on one of the units that we use. It's called a dimmerstat. And what I love about the dimmerstat is you can adjust the dimmerstat that, for example, from 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, it will pick up to 27, 28 degrees on your hot side. And then 6 o'clock tonight, it's going to drop that same spot to about 20, leaving the rest of the enclosure on about 17, 18 degrees. So the snake can 100% feel a huge differentiation in the cycles. The other thing you can do, and this one I find pretty risky, especially in your colder areas in South Africa, is you can manually switch off the heat at night. The problem is you're going to get the wrong cold spell and you're going to shock that snake below its minimum, which is normally about 15 to 17. That's the bare minimum. And we borderline cycle these guys to about between 18 to 20 degrees. They can get the occasional 15 to 17, but in general, if you can keep them on that 18 to 20, that works well. So I don't do the manual thing. Number one, I'm not always at home due to my work. And number two is you forget about it. So 2-3 days later, you remember, oh, I've got to cycle my snakes. So that's crucial for the males. I do the same with the females, but not as cold. What I do with my females, so now we've got that first cold snap, I'm going to put this male into cycling for a couple of weeks, for about between 2 and 4 weeks. And then all I do is a normal female on this size, I would normally feed every 10 to 14 days. Just watching her weight as long as she stays prime. And when I get that first cold snap, I use number one for my male to start temperature cycling so that he gets prepped and go into breeding mode. And then number two is I start food cycling my females. So what I do is instead of just feeding every 10 to 14 days, I now increase smaller food portions, but I feed every 5 to 7 days. So she doesn't recognize as big or small food items. She just recognizes food, and she recognizes that the food cycle is now increased. So food in abundance, I need to eat, and that actually creates follicle growth on females. So before the winter comes, she picks up a little bit of weight on that feeding cycle that you've now put her on, and in that time period, you can actually watch her. So you keep your male in brumation, cycling your day-night temperatures until the female sheds. And that is indication of what we call a pre-ovulation shed. So she will actually shed before she goes into ovulation. And on the colubrids and on the black-headed pythons and aspadites, the more cannibalistic snakes, will go into how you can use that shedding in your advantage with cannibalistic snakes. But for these guys, they're not cannibalistic. So once that first shed goes in, or she does that first shedding, I'll normally put that shedding in with the male for a day, see his reaction, and then the first evening I'll put the male in with the female, and I'll leave him in there for about 3 to 5 days until I see a visual lock. And you can leave him in there for about 3 to 5 days and then take him out again, separate them for about 5 days, and in that 5 days you can actually offer small meals just to maintain them throughout, and then you can reintroduce them. If you do see that you've got a male that's not really interested, it's not like you did something wrong. All that's happening there is, we call them lazy breeders. And that's the reason I actually got this fella. He's a very normal looking children's, and we focusing on the ghost phase with the reduced pattern females. So I don't want this one to breed with our females just yet. So I actually got him to entice male combat. So what you do, that same shedding that we got now out of the females enclosure, I'll put the two males together, and I'll actually put the shedding of the female in the enclosure. So they smell that pheromones and they see, well, there's another male, there's competition, and obviously they will engage in male combat. Certain species, especially like Morelia, you've got to be very careful because male combat can be pretty brutal and they can bite each other, in some cases even kill each other. Children's and spotted pythons, not. They just engage in the normal shuffling, trying to push the competitor down kind of male combat. And that also just pushes up their hormones. And then basically within about half an hour, even if they're still busy fighting, you can actually remove the male that you want to put with the female and put him with the female. And you should start seeing locks that night. And those locks, they last pretty long. They're definitely giving us something to be jealous of. They can lock for, I've had locks recorded on the children's for over 12 hours. And once you see the locks are stopped and they're now doing their own thing, you can actually separate them and you can put the male back in. If it does look lazy, repeat the entire process. And that's one of the things that I use to cycle my winter breeders. I always say, if you don't know how to breed a snake, like I say, the information on this is the spring breeders, and we've noticed that's completely wrong. And John and myself actually went this year and we told ourselves, all right, we're going to start from the ground up. Every shed is a possible ovulation coming up, and we're actually just going to take it from there. So just do your natural cycle. So if it's winter and it's cold, run that natural cycle throughout your enclosures and your collection, and just mimic it right throughout. Eventually, you're going to get a lock. Weirdly enough, you get another member in the family is the spotted python. They, on the other hand, are spring breeders. So from the same family, you've got two different seasons. So watch out to generalize. And then another thing you need to keep in mind, we all always eager to breed our snakes and to get them going. And for me personally, it's probably one of the most rewarding feelings breeding snakes and seeing those babies hatch and getting them through. And it's a challenge, but a rewarding challenge in its own. Make sure that your females are up to weight. And that is one of the things it's impossible to cover every single species on what they should be. But there's a lot of information on the internet on the minimum weights. For example, children's python females in general, 300 grams. I only paired up my children's at 572 grams. So I made 100% sure that she'll be able to breed and give me good eggs. If they're underweight, you do have chances of running into some health issues, egg binding, unfertile eggs. So I've noticed keeping them on weight is crucial, and then also on age. Females, I'll start Antaresia at 3 years. Males, you can actually start at 2 years. Funny enough, this is one of the earliest breeding pythons that I've came across. They're pretty eager to get going. And males, if they can breed, you can put them together. I mean, they don't really have a limit. As long as they're adult, they're fine. I don't look at the weight on my males. I don't even know what my males weigh. I've got it on record somewhere, but on the top of my head, my females, I'll call out every single one of their weights. So long story short, just to recap everything, is do your natural cycles. If you've got cold spells going on, adjust your enclosures to cold spell according to your season. And I'm not one of those that believe in humidity cycles. Like I said, in the Western Cape, we got cold, wet winters, and Gauteng got cold, dry winters. But yet, in both areas, within the same time frame, we breed both snakes. So misting down and all that. Tropical snakes, whole different ball game. We'll go into that. But this is now based on winter breeding snakes. And if you're not sure if you've got a winter or spring breeding species, and you don't tend to find a lot of information on the internet, then if you follow these steps that I've explained now on your cycling with your outside temperatures on our natural climates, every shedding that starts from April all the way through to November, see every shedding as a potential pre-ovulation shedding and use that to your advantage until you see something happening. But just crucial, homework on your side is just make sure what is the cool down temperature on your species. If you're not sure, you can't find information, please leave a comment below and I'll try my best to answer it. From experience, what I've worked with. I haven't worked that species. I'll try my best to try and talk to other breeders that's worked with the species that you're inquiring about. So guys, that's very simple on cycling. We'll start going into this series now. So let's see this as part one. We'll start going into cycling the spring breeders once we've proven out spring breeders. So just a note, so if you've got proven breeders and you've bred them before, do not do what I say. Always make notes on when your female is shed. Even when I see ovulation happening and I get a shed after that, I'll make a note as a pre-lay shed. And I've noticed some of the pre-lay sheds are completely off on time periods on certain species because there's not a lot of information on it. And that's why we've now launched this little vlog to help you with that type of information. But we'll get down to ovulations and pre-lay sheds and what now. And when you can expect eggs and also egg incubation and incubation on its own. So yeah, this is what we've got so far. If you've got any comments or any more questions, please leave it down in the comments. While you're there, please like and subscribe our page, and we hope to bring you a lot more valuable information down the line. Guys, I hope you have a great day. Cheers, bye.